Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar sessions together with Cofense, engaging end users in phishing defense. First of all, we'd like to start with a short introduction of Access 42, and afterwards we'll hand over to the engineers of Cofense to discuss more in depth and show them their solutions. First of all, Access 42. Most of the technical people will know where the number 42 relies on, but of course it's from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, give you the answer to everything, and we're an organization with IT security and information security experts, an independent organization, and we believe that cybersecurity is not only a technique, but it's an attitude. You need to combine people, process, and technology, and we deliver that as services with a team of pragmatic cybersecurity experts. And our vision is think big, secure the world. We want to give something back to the environment. Therefore, things we find we'll share with the community as well. What are we doing? If you look to the services we deliver, we can divide them simply into three pillars. First, the consultancy pillar, where we deliver a lot of security services like penetration testing, red team exercises. We have a managed services environment, and we can resell licenses. And we have created a portfolio of several services. Most of them we rely on the managed services, and for that we see a red line of an attack, and over 90% of the attacks starts with an email. Therefore, we decided that we need to have a good email security solution in place, and we work together with Mimecast to deliver secure email. But after the email received, people will need to click on a malicious link or download stuff or leave credentials somewhere. So you need to train the people, the employees as well. Therefore, we work together with Cofense, and this session will dive more in depth to that discussion, how you can engage your employees to phishing defense. After all, there will still be something getting into the network, so you need to have a clean network. You need to identify vulnerabilities and find a solution how to mitigate them. For that part, vulnerability management, we work together with Tenable, and they can deliver container security as well, and web application scanning to see vulnerabilities over the whole stack, not only the infrastructure, but also the application and the containers. And in the end, you need a line of defense overall over your network and endpoints, and for that part we work together with CrowdStrike for endpoint detection and response, and Vectra for network detection and response. And the nice part of that, those two vendors, is that we combine their technology to deliver managed detection and response. Information we gather from all those services, we can correlate them in the data lake, use the threat intel, and define asset criticality or human criticality. And for the assets, we have dynamic rating in place, and we can even measure together with Tenable the cyber exposure score of your environment. That's what's real in short what Access 42 can deliver as a service. And now I will hand over to the guys from Cofense, and they will take you into the discussion of engaging employees in phishing defense. And
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cofense seminar, Engaging End Users in Phishing Defense. Are your teams combat ready? My name is Andy Spencer. I lead the sales engineering team at Cofense, and I'm joined today by our sales engineer for the Germany region, Ian Wallace. The Q1 2020 threat landscape which we have published as a document. It's available on the Cofense website. We also have a number of very current topics highlighting the increase of the abuse of cloud services as phishing destinations. And of course, the use of COVID-19 coronavirus-themed phishing, which we've seen an immense rise during these difficult times. I'd like to start out by illustrating what we see as the cyber kill chain with regard to phishing. And this is to set the stage a little bit. At Cofense, everything we do is about phishing defense. And so it behooves us, of course, to know what is phishing, to understand how the phishing threat actor goes about creating phishing, how they go about delivering phishing, and ultimately what they're trying to do. From the Cofense perspective, we can only observe the results of reconnaissance and weaponization. Those are the stages at which a phishing threat actor will research his target and seek out an exploit that can be delivered in a phishing email. The phishing threat actor will then attempt to send this email in the delivery phase and get it past the perimeter controls that the target organization has. These perimeter controls typically include firewalls, but really for the email vector, what we're talking about primarily are secure email gateways. After a phish has been delivered and has made it past the bastion of a secure email gateway, that's the point at which the phishing threat actor hopes that a victim, a user in his or her email inbox, will click on the link or will open the document or will follow the instructions in such a way as to allow that exploit to take root and be installed within the organization. After the installation of malware, the malicious code will typically beacon out to a command and control center for further instructions to ultimately accomplish the objective of the phishing threat actor. At Cofense, what we're trying to do is recognize as best as possible the delivery phase of this cyber kill chain. And all of the tools and solutions and services that we offer are intended to assist our clients to stay, as we call it, left of breach, to understand that a phishing email has arrived and to be able to deal with it in the fastest way possible. Much of the intelligence that we're going to communicate during this seminar today was gathered by the Cofense Phishing Defense Center. This is a managed service which Cofense operates, and we are analyzing on behalf of over 2 million end users. We're analyzing the emails that they determine to be suspicious, that they submit to the Phishing Defense Center for analysis. We are analyzing about 220,000 emails per month that were reported by end users. And of those, we can tell you definitively that 100% of those phishing emails that were submitted by end users made it past secure email gateways. The importance of this is to recognize that a secure email gateway, while necessary, while absolutely necessary, is not infallible. That a secure email gateway does not stop the threats that are delivered that the Cofense Phishing Defense Center analyzes and were delivered to the end user's email inboxes. Threats have changed, but defenses haven't. When Cofense started out as PhishMe in 2008, our primary focus was on educating end users and ensuring that they had the knowledge and the abilities to be able to recognize, to identify phishing attempts. Phishing attempts have changed dramatically over the years, but the intent has not. And in our mind, the defense that is necessary to mount against these threats has also not changed. Cofense continues to deliver PhishMe as a phishing simulation and awareness tool to ensure that end users have the latest information necessary to be able to recognize current threats. Today, however, we understand that to defend against the phishing threat, awareness is not enough. Awareness is an important element of this, but we also need to make sure that we are helping end users with the simplest possible way to report a suspected phish, and we'll talk about that a bit later, as well as tools to enable security operations to be able to quickly deal with the phishing threats or the suspicious emails that are reported by end users, and ultimately remove these from the environment either proactively by searching through, for instance, intelligence to be able to understand current threats, or very quickly reactively, as in removing threats as they are still in the email inbox. Cofense operates a number of different research projects that are able to identify a number of different types of malware and malware families. What we see here are some examples of common remote access Trojans, keyloggers, Trojans, downloaders, various different ransomware families, as well as crypto mining, which is increasing in prevalence. And all of these malwares have in common that they were delivered by phishing. Now, let me call out that credential phishing, which you see at the bottom of the screen. Credential phishing is still the most common method of attack. A credential phish is when an end user is sent a request to log into a corporate service using their corporate credentials, but it's actually a fake service which only exists to record the user's username and their password. And in sometimes they do this in a very malicious manner of giving the user I'm sorry, that password is not correct, and being greedy and seeking to collect multiple passwords. These passwords and usernames are then used in other attacks on an organization in order to move laterally across an organization, collect information, and ultimately deliver further malware and ransomware to the organization. All of these malwares that we're observing right here made it through a number of very highly respected secure email gateways. Why? Because they were delivered in such a manner that the gateways could not recognize. This malware was delivered in phishing emails that were obfuscated, that were changed in such a way as the static signature-based comparisons that these gateways use to detect malware could not discover. Ian, I'd like you to take us through some of the highlights of our Q1 2020 phishing report. Would you do us the favor?
Yes, glad to, Andy. Thanks. So on this slide, what we see is the top 6 categories or phenotypes of malware that we've identified over the last quarter compared with the preceding quarter. There's a couple of interesting tendencies which are quite strong in this graph. One is that we see a marked decrease in the activity attributed to keyloggers. That's almost certainly down to better defenses against this particular type of technology. And we see an increase in banking-specific malware and a decrease in remote access toolkits. What we're also seeing is just a very broad spectrum of malware that's being used, including some malware coming back out of retirement, being repackaged, stuff that we haven't seen for quite a while, and some newer variations of existing malware suites. The repackaging and the coming back out of retirement means there's quite a lot of stuff that it's just very difficult for traditional gateways to detect based on signatures, because the signatures are being modified slightly. And unless it's an exact match, then detecting something based on signatures is just going to fail. So it's relatively easy to evade detection. And that's what we're seeing here. These are the stuff that's actually making it through the gateways and being reported to our phishing defense center. The delivery mechanisms really haven't changed very much over quite a long period of time. Office macro is still the main way of delivering malware. Macros have become such an integral part of the way business users use the Office suite that it's almost unthinkable to simply turn them off. A lot of documents that we work with on a daily basis in a corporate environment as opposed to just for home user use, rely on macros to make our tasks easier. The second most common delivery mechanism that we've seen has remained the same consistently over the last couple of quarters is a Microsoft Office vulnerability. It's a memory corruption vulnerability, which allows the attacker to execute arbitrary code within the Microsoft Office suite, and underscores really the importance of patching and how the attackers will continue to invest their time and effort in vulnerabilities that remain unpatched to gain access to computers. So this slide shows us the location of the command and control infrastructure that the attackers are using. Once they've successfully infected a large number of devices with malware, they need some infrastructure to control and direct that malware. Attackers use the same infrastructure as businesses. You could argue that the attackers are a business. And so it's no surprise that we see the location of these command and control centers matching the locations of those computing resources. So the United States accounting for a large chunk of that. Germany is one of the main locations for data centers in the European region, so they account for quite a large chunk of that. It doesn't mean that the attackers themselves are American or German, or that they're based in America or Germany. It's simply they're using the same infrastructure that the businesses are using, and that's the locations that we're seeing here on the map. So to cover the next slide, I'm going to hand back to Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. The abuse of trusted platforms has become an increasing observation that we have seen across many, many phishing attacks. We teach end users to, for instance, look at the domain of a URL that has been emailed to them. And we hope to teach them that if it's not a .com address or not an HTTPS hyperlink, that they should be cautious about that. And yet when the file that's being emailed to them is resident on SharePoint or OneDrive, that is a trusted Microsoft platform. And of course, that end user's analysis of the URL is positive from all that we've taught them. So now we need to continue to educate our users as to the danger of malware being hosted on these public services. Over 3/4 of threats that we have discovered that have been hosted in public cloud services were hosted on Microsoft platforms. And strangely enough, these emails also made it through Microsoft secure email gateways. Some examples of cloud service abuse. This one that we show here is notable for being a credential harvesting campaign that we've tracked for over 4 months. It's a very long time for a credential harvesting campaign. We see multi-stage payloads. At first, here's a PDF file that has been hosted on Hightail, a public file sharing service. And that PDF contains the link to Credential Phishing's site, which redirects to an actual SurveyMonkey survey. So an analysis of the URLs from the end user's perspective leads them to believe that this is a perfectly legitimate site for them to enter their corporate credentials into. In Q1, we observed a great deal of ransomware, although it had not returned to the same level that we had observed in 2019. In many cases, the ransomware families that we discovered in phishing emails were well known. We saw Hackbit, Nemty, and Dharma families of ransomware making it past secure email gateways by using certain obfuscations such as password protected zip files and link shorteners such that secure email gateways could not inspect the payload. Our prediction for ransomware in the next few quarters are that the targeted attacks that we're observing are going to continue. Targeted attacks are when the threat actors have done a fair amount of research on the targets and they understand which data is most valuable to the organization. They're then getting into organizations' perimeter controls, finding out those databases and those files that have the greatest amount of importance to an organization, and they are either stealing these files or encrypting them in such a way as to disrupt business operations. But our prediction is certainly that broader extortion tactics are going to continue to increase. And this is not just the data breach and the threat of encrypting data to make it unusable, but also exfiltration of that data and basically holding that data ransom hostage and demanding payment, or else they would release that information, that private information. Ian, I hope you'll take us through some of examples that we've observed recently of this very urgent topic of COVID-19.
Thanks, Andy. Happy to. So right from the start of the corona crisis, our Phishing Defense Center started to pick up on emails reported from our customers around this corona theme, working from home advice from different authorities, health advice, infections in your area, possible cures. And the criminals were here really exploiting basic human emotions, our fear for our own and our family's safety, our concerns about the current situation, attempting really to get hold of any concrete information that might help us to make the right decisions. And we've summarized a lot of what we found there, a lot of that information in an information center as part of our website. I'd encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't already done so. That's available for customers or non-customers. And for the more technically inclined, we've also produced a Yara rule, which can be used to detect similar phishing emails. And this can be then used in a number of other third-party security gateways and security appliances. Let's take a look at a concrete example of such a phishing email. Here's one which purports to come from the Center for Disease Control, contains information about approved treatment and cure, information that we'd all really like to receive. It's in a PowerPoint presentation, a fairly common way to send information within our company. Apart from that, relatively little content, typical of a phishing email. The less content there is, the less there is for a secure email gateway to be able to pick up on. Beneath this simple looking email is a surprisingly sophisticated attack. Within this PowerPoint presentation is embedded an Excel presentation, and within that Excel presentation there's a link to an apparently legitimate Microsoft SharePoint site which prompts the user for their logon credentials. As mentioned earlier, very common to use the same infrastructure for the attack as the customers normally use for their business. So not obvious to a user unless they're very, very attentive. We all get used to just typing our credentials in whenever prompted, particularly if you've just changed your password. So a fairly effective attack. Let's take a look at another example. This one is about remote working from home and some action required urgently by the user. As we're working from home, we find that our companies are maybe using cloud services that we didn't previously use. Now that we don't have access to our own company infrastructure, putting new policies in place, everything is changing. So again, the user is going to be not surprised to see such an email. Hopefully they will recognize that the URL, which has been obfuscated here, is not what they would expect. There's also some grammar mistakes, capitalization is wrong. There's enough indicators of a phish in there for a well-trained user to click the reporting button and to report this email to the Phishing Defense Center or to their own SOC. Our next example is a business compromise or CEO fraud email. These are really impossible for any sort of automated tools to detect because it really is just an email. There's nothing in there except text. There's no malware, there's no attachments, there's nothing really for a security appliance to pick up on. It's just really asking the user to perform some action, or it's the start typically of a conversation. And what we see is that the attacker will quite quickly try and move away from email to some less secure form of communication. So there'll typically be a follow-up email with a request to phone the person or to send an SMS or to perform some action such as buying gift cards or making a bank transfer. And the final example I wanted to share with you is one we saw recently. Again, it's a PowerPoint presentation, a short, succinct email, very little text, no personalization. The only thing which is really unusual about this, apart from maybe the sender address not being known to the recipient, is that the file extension is unusual. ODP is not something that this user would probably be familiar with, and that should be enough for them to recognize it as a phishing email. The reason it got through, because the gateway also wasn't expecting this type of attachment and therefore wasn't programmed to block it. It's not something that they normally see, and therefore the assumption is it's probably safe. If we were being brave and trying to make some predictions about what the future holds, certainly by this point in time, we know that the COVID crisis hasn't gone away and we're at the end of Q2. It's going to carry on into Q3. And personally, I don't believe we'll see the end of it within this year. So we'll continue to see attacks around this topic. Hopefully, we'll become more aware, more sensitized to it. There'll be less new working practices will settle down and things will get better. There's new risks coming up. Part of that is that people are working from home and therefore without the usual safety net of being able to ask co-workers for a second opinion. One of the things that Cofense always encourages is this a culture of warning other workers about phish. And that's really missing at the moment. So we're all a little bit more anxious and a little bit more alone and vulnerable. Another interesting trend that we're watching is the increased bandwidth offered by 5th generation communication technology, meaning that we'll have even more ubiquitous access to information and resources, regardless of location, from an increasingly wide variety of devices. And as we move into exciting new territories, we expect that the criminals will be there with us, finding new ways to exploit the latest technology, as they always have done. And another thing which unfortunately is unlikely to change is that those sectors of our society, education, government, healthcare, that have been neglected and underfunded for so long are likely to remain neglected, underfunded, and therefore vulnerable at the time really when we need them the most. Again, we expect the criminals to carry on exploiting these weaknesses. So having seen what the attackers, what the criminals are doing, I'd like to hand back to Andy now to give us the solution, to explain to us how end users can be enlisted in the fight against this malware.
Thank you, Ian. All of the information that we've seen so far illustrates the dangers that are landing in the users' inboxes. And I think it's very important, and this is very much what Cofense stands for as a company, is that we are ensuring that we're providing not only end users, but all people with the right tools for their specific roles to be able to participate in phishing defense. When we look at phishing defense, I think we need to start with two assumptions and two things that every organization needs to accept. These are both based on human nature. One part of human nature is that the bad will continue, is that phishing threat actors will continue to innovate and find ways of getting their malware and getting their exploits past perimeter controls, secure email gateways. And the second part of human nature is that no matter how much awareness we run, users will still click, that there will still be a number of people who are careless and who click on links or open up documents that they really shouldn't have. In order to defend against this, and under the assumption of this, we believe that awareness programs are, of course, a very important part of that phishing defense. But why don't we begin with the end in mind? Why don't we begin with that hope or that desire in mind to ensure that a phishing threat that has been delivered to the inbox is responded to appropriately, that it is remediated quickly and removed from the environment as rapidly as possible. This rapid and decisive response leads to an improved security posture. And at Cofense, we have solutions to assist in that response, in making it very quick and very easy to be able to remove phishing threats from the environment. Knowing what to remove from the environment is definitely the job of detection. And detecting faster allows us to respond faster. So part of this is getting all users to be reliable detectives. This includes the awareness training that we've spoken of, but it also includes providing end users with the quickest and easiest, most logical possible way of reporting a phishing threat or reporting a suspicious email. You saw in a number of Ian's slides the Cofense reporter button in the email client. It's important to meet end users where they are reading emails, whether it be on the desktop, on the web, on the mobile device, and provide them with that consistent, quick, and easy method of being able to report something when they see something suspicious. That's a key part of detection. Another key part of detection is allowing the security operations team to be able to quickly decide whether a reported email is malicious or not. These are the services and solutions that Cofense offers along the lines of Cofense Phishing Defense Center and Cofense Triage. Awareness is a very important precursor element to detection and response. And with awareness, what we mean is ensuring that end users have all of the knowledge and information available to be able to detect current phishing threats. By doing so, what we're doing is we're telling stories and we're providing the end users with supportive practice drills, and perhaps most importantly, we're using real examples of real phish. And this is where Cofense PhishMe excels in engaging with our research and our intelligence departments to be able to take actual phishing threats and turn them into phishing simulations, such that users are increasing their awareness at a very high level. And all of this is supported by the intelligence that Cofense gathers from Phishing Defense Center, as well as from our intelligence and research arms, of gathering all of the information possible to understand the current phishing threat landscape and sharing this information both publicly through our phishing threat reports, as well as in commercial feeds, threat intelligence feeds that allow the automated ingestion of threat indicators for proactive blocking. This is where phishing defense rubber hits the road by reducing the threat exposure and increasing the ability of IT organizations to contain active threats. If you see something, say something. If you see a suspicious email in your inbox, simply to click on the report phishing button and forward that suspicion to the professionals who have all of the tools and training necessary to be able to determine if it is malicious or not. When end users are trained to report phishing on a broad basis, they dramatically increase the amount of intelligence that is available to the threat defenders of the organization, and who can then determine, is this malicious? And if it is, to be able to block it, to mitigate the threat, and to remediate any examples of the phishing that might have gotten through by somebody else. Phishing defense with Cofense means that we're providing organizations with the quickest and easiest possible way of identifying and responding to phishing threats. Phishing attacks will continue to occur. They will continue to evade secure email gateways. This is not an argument against a secure email gateway, but merely an observation that a phishing threat actor is always going to find new ways to get past the secure email gateway. Phishing threats will always land in mailboxes, and they will always be looked at by end users. But when an end user is properly trained, when they are properly prepared to, with suspicion and with understanding about phishing threats, to be able to detect a potential phish, and when they are provided with the quickest and easiest possible way to report that phish, they generate an immense amount of crowdsourced intelligence that fuels an automated and automatic response on the part of security operations teams to be able to remediate threats very quickly. This is, in a nutshell, what Cofense is all about. We provide both the awareness and training for end users, as well as that simple method for being able to report the suspicious emails. We also provide sophisticated security operations tools to be able to automatically and automatedly respond and remediate threats in a very quick and easy manner. And we provide the intelligence which supports all of the decisions that are being made by both the end users and security operations teams to be able to rapidly identify and remediate threats.
Thank you all for joining this webinar sessions. I hope you'll have learned a lot about it. Of course, there might be some questions. You can share those questions to send an email to Jasper at access42.nl. most of the people already have this email address. Otherwise, yeah, just look into the event page, and there you can find the email addresses you can use as well. We will also share this session on our website. Hope it was really useful, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.